She married him thinking she had a husband. What she didn't know was that she had married into a war. And the man she loved would never fight for her. They insulted her, lived in her home, called her names. And the one person who should have protected her, watched. Stay with me, because the way this ends will change how you see marriage forever. When people saw Amora and Daniel from the outside, they called it a blessing. Daniel was calm, educated, soft-spoken, the kind of man elders nodded approvingly at. Amora was warm, respectful, radiant in a quiet way. Together, they looked like one of those couples people used as examples during wedding prayers. But what people didn't see was that Amora entered that marriage alone. Not single, alone. The first crack appeared 3 weeks after the wedding. It was small. Almost invisible. Daniel's mother, Mrs. Adeyemi, stood in Amora's kitchen one morning, arms crossed, scanning the space like an inspector. "So this is how you arrange plates?" she asked, clicking her tongue. "In my house, we do better." Amora smiled. "A polite one. The kind you give when you want peace more than pride." "I can rearrange them, more." Mrs. Adeyemi didn't smile back. She turned and walked out of the kitchen as if Amora hadn't spoken. Daniel was sitting in the living room that day, scrolling through his phone. Amora waited. She expected, no, hoped, he would say something. He didn't. That was the day her silence learned how to sit beside his. Daniel's family didn't visit. They occupied. First, it was his younger sister, Kemi, who came for a few days, and stayed for 3 months. Then his elder brother, Tond, who felt free enough to eat without greeting and criticize without apology. Then their mother, who arrived with suitcases and rules. Their presence filled the house like heavy smoke, slow, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Amora would wake up early to cook. Not because she was asked, but because if she didn't, comments would follow her all day like flies. A wife who sleeps while others are hungry. Don't you know how to keep a home? So Daniel married this. They said these things openly. Sometimes while she was in the room. Sometimes like she wasn't. Once, Kemi laughed and said, "Brother, you really tried, sure. At least she's quiet." Quiet. Amora felt the word land on her chest like a stone. She looked at Daniel. He laughed too. Not loudly. Just enough to avoid tension. That laugh stayed with her longer than the insult. Her home stopped being hers. She couldn't sit comfortably in her own living room. Someone always had an opinion about how she crossed her legs, how she spoke, how she breathed. If food was too salty, it was Amora. If it wasn't sweet enough, it was Amora. If Daniel looked tired, it was Amora's fault. If anything went wrong, her name was the easiest one to call. "Daniel, control your wife. Daniel, your wife is rude. Daniel, your wife thinks she's better than us." Each time, Amora waited for him to say, "Stop. Enough. Don't talk to my wife like that." He never did. Instead, he would pull her aside later and whisper, "Please, just ignore them. You know how my family is. Ignore them." As if words didn't bruise. As if disrespect didn't scar. As if marriage wasn't supposed to be a shelter. One evening, Amora served dinner late. She had been unwell all day, her body heavy, her head aching. She still cooked. Still served. Still smiled. Mrs. Adeyemi tasted the food and pushed the plate away. "This is rubbish." The word echoed. "Rubbish." Kemi laughed. Ton shook his head dramatically. And then Mrs. Adeyemi looked straight at Amora and said, "A woman like you will scatter a man's destiny." Something inside Amora cracked. Not loudly. It was the quiet kind of break, the one that changes you forever. She turned to Daniel. Her eyes asked the question her mouth couldn't form anymore. He looked away. That night, after everyone slept, Amora sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. "Daniel," she said softly. He hummed, half asleep. "I don't feel safe in this house." He sighed. "You're overthinking. They insult me. Your mother calls me names. Your siblings treat me like I don't belong." Silence. "Then, you should try harder to win them over." That was the moment Amora realized something terrifying. Daniel didn't think she was being abused. He thought she was failing an exam. She stopped complaining after that. Not because things improved, but because hope died quietly. She learned to swallow insults with water, to clean tears before they fell, to speak only when spoken to. Neighbors noticed she no longer laughed. Friends asked why she stopped visiting. She always said, "I'm fine." But fine is what people say when they don't feel seen. It started subtly. Useless. Barren-minded. Village girl. Each word sharper than the last. Once, during an argument between Daniel and his brother, Ton turned to Amora and snapped, "If you had sense, this family wouldn't be suffering." Amora didn't even respond. She looked at Daniel. Again. He said nothing. That silence didn't just hurt. It confirmed something. Amora didn't wake up different that morning. There was no thunder. No announcement in her spirit. No dramatic realization. She simply woke up empty. Not tired. Not angry. Just done. She stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection longer than usual. Her eyes looked older than her years. Not from age, but from endurance. She remembered who she was before marriage. The girl who laughed loudly. The woman who spoke clearly. The person who didn't shrink to make peace. And for the first time in years, she asked herself a dangerous question. What if I stopped trying to be understood? She stopped explaining. When insults came, she didn't defend herself. When comments flew, she didn't react. When they complained, she nodded politely. Daniel thought things had improved. "She's finally adjusting," he told his mother one afternoon. Mrs. Adeyemi smiled. A victorious smile. "She knows her place now." What none of them understood was that Amora wasn't submitting. She was detaching. Something shifted in the house. Food was still cooked, but without warmth. The house was still clean, but without love. Amora was present, but emotionally absent. She no longer waited for Daniel to come home. No longer dressed to impress him. No longer shared stories about her day. When he spoke, she listened. When he asked, she answered. But her eyes were no longer asking questions. That scared him. One evening, Daniel's family gathered again, as usual. They criticized the soup. They laughed loudly. They ignored Amora's presence. Then Mrs. Adeyemi said it again. "This girl has no respect. I don't know what you saw in her." Daniel waited. He expected Amora to react. She didn't. She calmly stood up, cleared the table, and walked to the bedroom. Something about that unsettled him. For the first time, Daniel followed her. "Why didn't you respond?" he asked. She folded clothes slowly. "I heard her. That's it." Amora looked at him then. Really looked at him. And said, quietly, "I'm tired of bleeding where I'm not protected." Daniel laughed awkwardly. "You're being dramatic." She didn't reply. But something in her eyes closed that night. Amora stopped bending. She stopped cooking special meals for visitors who disrespected her. She stopped waking up early to please people who despised her. She stopped apologizing for existing. When Daniel's sister snapped at her one afternoon, Amora calmly said, Don't speak to me like that. The room froze. Kemi laughed nervously. See her mouth. Amora didn't raise her voice. If it happens again, I will leave the room. And next time, the house. Daniel stared at her like he didn't recognize her. Because he didn't. This version of Amora had been buried alive for years. It happened on an ordinary night. Daniel came home late. He expected dinner. There was none. Amora sat on the bed reading. You didn't cook, he asked. I ate, she replied. That was all. No apology. No explanation. He felt something twist inside his chest. You've changed, he said. She closed the book slowly. No. I just stopped begging to be loved. That sentence followed him into his sleep. Days later, he tried to talk. Why are you acting distant? Amora didn't shout. Didn't cry. Didn't accuse. She said. I waited for you to choose me every day. I waited for you to defend me. I waited for you to protect me. She paused. And one day, I realized waiting was killing me. Daniel opened his mouth. She raised her hand, not aggressively, just gently. I'm not asking anymore. That was when fear finally entered his voice. Are you leaving me? Amora smiled sadly. I already left. I just still live here. A woman who is angry can be reasoned with. A woman who is crying still hopes. But a woman who is calm after suffering. She has already made peace with loss. Daniel felt it. The house felt it. Even his mother noticed. This girl is becoming proud, Mrs. Adeyemi said. But pride had nothing to do with it. Amora had simply chosen herself. The family gathering was Daniel's idea. He didn't say it out loud, but he hoped, prayed, that if everyone came together, things would reset. That Amora would soften. That normal would return. Normal, to him, meant silence. They came early that Saturday. His mother arrived first, inspecting the house like a territory she still owned. His siblings followed, loud, entitled, comfortable in a space that had never truly welcomed its owner. Amora greeted them politely. No warmth. No coldness. Just courtesy. That alone unsettled them. It happened during lunch. Kemi complained about the food again. Loudly. Dramatically. This rice is dry. Is it too much to ask for common sense? Amora continued eating. Ton laughed. Brother, see your wife embarrassing you. Everyone waited. This was usually where Amora shrank. She didn't. She wiped her mouth calmly, looked up, and said, not shouting, not shaking. If you don't like the food in my house, you are free not to eat it. The table went silent. Mrs. Adeyemi's face tightened. How dare you talk back to me like that? Amora stood. I didn't talk back. I spoke. Daniel felt the room closing in. Amora, he warned softly. She turned to him. And for the first time, she spoke in front of them all, not angrily, but clearly. I have been insulted in this house for years. I have been called names. I have been disrespected in my own home. She looked at his mother. I endured it. She looked at his siblings. I tolerated it. Then she looked at her husband. And you allowed it. Gasps. Mrs. Adeyemi stood up, trembling with rage. Daniel, are you hearing this? Your wife has lost respect completely. Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That was the humiliation. Not the shouting. Not the scene. But the moment everyone saw that he could not protect her, even now. Amora sat back down. I'm done eating, she said calmly and walked away. No tears. No drama. The family left shortly after, muttering insults under their breath. Daniel remained seated long after the door closed. For the first time, the house felt too big. And too empty. Amora didn't pack immediately. That would have caused noise. Instead, she began disappearing in small ways. She opened a separate savings account. She updated her CV quietly. She reconnected with friends she'd lost. She began taking long walks alone. Daniel noticed, but didn't confront her. Fear had replaced authority. One night, he asked, "Are you planning something?" She smiled gently. "Planning myself." That was all. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary. Daniel went to work. When he returned, the house was clean. Too clean. Her clothes were gone. Her toiletries missing. Her side of the wardrobe empty. Only one letter sat on the table. Not dramatic. Not long. Just honest. "I waited for you to protect me until I learned to protect myself. Love without safety is not love. I forgive you, but I choose me." Daniel sank into the couch. For the first time in his life, he cried. Not because she left, but because he finally understood why. 2 months later, life humbled the family. Mrs. Adeyemi fell ill. Not small ill. Serious. Hospital visits. Bills. Care. And suddenly, they remembered Amora. The same woman they mocked. The same woman they abused. The same woman they chased away with silence. "She's a nurse," someone said. "She's responsible," another added. "She'll help," Mrs. Adeyemi whispered weakly. Daniel was sent. Amora looked healthier. Calmer. Lighter. Daniel stood at her door, unsure how to speak. "I'm sorry," he finally said. She nodded. "I know. My mother, she needs help." Amora was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that stunned him. "I wish her healing." Pause. "But access to me is no longer automatic." He swallowed. "Can you come back?" She looked him in the eye. "I don't return to places where my dignity had to beg." Daniel left that day changed. Not redeemed. Changed. He had learned too late that silence is a form of betrayal. Marriage without protection is a cage. Love that doesn't defend will eventually lose. Amora went on to build a life where her voice was not a problem, but a gift. And Daniel. He became a warning story told quietly to young men. Life moved on. It always does. But it didn't move forward for everyone the same way. Daniel aged faster than time required. Not in appearance, but in spirit. He remarried, briefly. That marriage didn't last. The second woman left after 1 year, saying words that echoed too closely to Amora's truth. "I don't feel safe with you." His family remained the same. Still loud. Still entitled. Still convinced they were never the problem. Only now, no woman stayed long enough to endure them. Daniel finally understood something bitter. A man who cannot stand up for his wife will eventually stand alone. Amora, on the other hand, flourished quietly. She didn't become loud. She didn't become bitter. She didn't preach revenge. She simply chose better. Better friends. Better boundaries. Better peace. One afternoon, years later, she was invited to speak at a small gathering, young couples, newly engaged men and women, hopeful and nervous about marriage. She wasn't introduced as a survivor. She was introduced as a woman of wisdom. Someone asked her a question that made the room go still. What is the most important thing to look for in a spouse? Amora didn't answer immediately. Then she said, choose someone who protects your dignity even when you are not in the room. The room went silent. She continued. Love is not just affection. Marriage is not endurance. And silence in the face of abuse is not peace, it is permission. Some people nodded. Some looked uncomfortable. Truth often does that. To the men, she said. If you marry a woman, she becomes your responsibility, not your family's punching bag. Protection is not violence. It is boundaries. And defending your wife does not mean disrespecting your parents, it means correcting wrong. To the women, she said. Love should not cost you your voice. If you are shrinking to keep peace, the peace is fake. And staying where you are not safe is not loyalty, it is self-erasure. Daniel heard about that speech from someone else. He sat alone in his quiet house that night, replaying memories he had once dismissed. The kitchen insult. The laughter. Her eyes asking him for help. And his silence. He finally understood the truth he had avoided for years. He didn't lose Amara because she was difficult. He lost her because he was absent where it mattered most. Some men think marriage is about being chosen. They forget it is also about choosing, daily. Some families think access is automatic. They forget respect is the price. Some women think endurance equals virtue. They forget self-respect is survival. Amara didn't leave angrily. She left whole. And that was the loudest statement she ever made. Because the most dangerous betrayal is not loud cruelty. It is quiet abandonment. And the strongest people are not those who stay and suffer, but those who walk away when love stops feeling safe. Kindly subscribe, like, and comment for more interesting stories.